It sounds really simple, just 3 steps. Mm-hmm. But what it is it becomes a way of life. It becomes an aspirational journey, and it shifts the dopamine that you get from consumerism to conscious consumerism. And we do that through drip feeding education.
Hello, and welcome to the EcoSend Podcast, a weekly podcast on becoming a climate-conscious business. Every week, we'll be interviewing founders, marketers, and leaders who are championing the climate. The podcast is hosted by myself, James Gill, co-founder and CEO of Go Squared, and the makers of EcoSend. If you run a business or are responsible for growing one, and you want to have a positive impact on the environment, then listen on. Every episode, our goal is for you to learn something and be inspired to take some action. Every single one of us making small changes and some large changes will add up. We're all in this together. So let's get on with the show. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's meet today's guest. Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend Podcast. The EcoSend Podcast is a weekly show where I'm speaking to people in and around the world of digital sustainability, climate, basically making the world a little bit better in whatever they do. And I am always so excited to meet every single guest we have on the show. We always talk about for about 30 minutes each episode, and I hope every time that people come away both inspired, educated, and a little bit entertained, if at all possible. And I'm really pleased this week to be joined by Richard Dickson from Play It Green, who is the co-founder of the award-winning sustainability company. Richard has a background in psychology and philosophy, and he's a proponent of conscious capitalism and better business. Richard's also, and whether or not this makes you like him more or less, he's also a lifelong Manchester City fan and a fitness enthusiast, but we'll forgive him for that. But I'm so excited to have Richard join us today. Richard could not be a better guest to have on the show. I'm so excited to dig into some of the topics you've suggested, Richard. So hi, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Really good to be here. I've been really excited for this.
Yeah, great to have you, Richard. So I gave a little short intro there, but Richard, maybe in your own words, what are you up to at the moment? What do you do?
So I, 2.5 years ago, founded Play It Green, which is a conscious capitalist model business to help people and businesses reduce their footprint and have an ongoing environmental and social impact whilst they're on that journey of sustainability.
Awesome. And for those wondering, we signed up to Play It Green a few months ago, earlier in the year. It's been really great so far to be on that journey with you, Richard. So thank you for bringing so many great businesses, brands together to all put the planet and the world a little bit higher up the agenda. It's always awesome to see others doing that. I hugely excited to talk to you more about it. So I guess, Richard, did you wake up and just start this and think that's what you're going to do, or was there a journey towards that? How did you get here?
So it probably started when I got moved schools at 6 because I asked too many questions. Yeah,
at 6, that's pretty early.
My parents went to a parents' evening and were told I was a disruptive influence because I asked too many questions, and I'd always been brought up to ask why. But that became like my mantra, and so I ended up studying psychology and philosophy because I wanted to know why we do things, why we're here, what's our place in the universe, all those questions. And I was really excited by evolutionary psychology, sort of what's led us to where we are at this point. And obviously things have changed rapidly, probably more so in the last 50 years than ever before, in the way society works and the way people interact. It's changed hugely. Yeah. And it was that questioning and the looking for reasons why we do stuff that's led me to this point. It was my thesis in philosophy that got me into conscious capitalism. So I was looking at the root of evil. And
I see.
I had read this amazing story about when the French were in Canada and partitioning Canada, and they'd spoken to the indigenous people who couldn't understand how the French were calling themselves sort of evolved and enlightened when they allowed money and property to give them power over other people. And the indigenous people said, our chief is our chief because it suits the tribe. It's not because the chief has power. And I started looking at capitalism and thinking it's a bit like the survival of the fittest, where you have an apex predator. And I could see I recently discovered I was neurodiverse, and part of the, one of the things I see is patterns. And I could see these patterns in similarities between evolution, the survival of the fittest, and capitalism, where one person would amass all the wealth and all the property and suddenly have dominion over everyone, because that's how it works. And you see it's happening now with the sort of oligarchs and people like Bill Gates, who have huge amounts of power over other people just because of finance. And don't get me wrong, I believe in reward for doing well, but I think that there needs to be checks and balances. That made me feel uncomfortable throughout my career. I was told it was a fairy tale when I finished university. I got a good mark for the thesis, but I was told it was a fairy tale and it wouldn't work. Strangely, I recently met the head of thought leadership at Nielsen, and she said it's actually the playbook now, which is quite cool. Anyway, I tried loads of things for fulfillment and nothing worked. And then about 7 years ago, and this is where it really all started, I got offered a job for a not-for-profit, planting trees in Tanzania and educating in agroforestry. And they basically take communities that were reliant on foreign aid and educate them in agroforestry and provide them with the tools and the infrastructure. And they did everything themselves. So it was empowering. I helped them scale. Then when they got investment, I left. And during that 3-year period, I met some incredible people who talked about sustainability and had spent their whole lives in the field. And they all said the same thing. There was a pattern, again, to the solutions. And it wasn't, well, whilst trees and reforestation and repairing the damaged ecosystem is part of it, actually it was behaviour change that was needed. It was a consciousness shift to different behaviour patterns. So that's what I spent 20 years in retail doing, training and developing teams and people and creating behaviour change. And it works on a bottom-up and top-down approach. Your bottom-up is working on individuals, your top-down is working on the community and creating alignment with values and goals, so that all of a sudden you have collaboration within the community, and then other communities see that community and they follow suit. I could see that there was a way to put that together with trees and conscious capitalism, using business as a force for good to create a business. And that's really where Play It Green came from.
I see. Wow. So, and I mean, it's really interesting hearing it all connect up there, and you seeing those patterns over the years. The not-for-profit as well, you sort of skipped over there. You helped them scale quite a bit, right? Like, I think you mentioned, what was it? The number of trees you were helping them plant and the scale at which they were doing that was, the numbers sounded unbelievable.
Well, yeah, it was good growth. They planted about 65,000 trees a year before I joined. Yeah. And they were planting, well, we planted in the 3 years about 1.5 million, with a massive scale towards the end. So yeah, it was, and they've gone on to do great things in lots of different countries. So, but for me, reforestation's no longer the answer. It's got to be part of that entire solution, that behaviour change, and that boils down to education. That's what's lacking in sustainability.
Sure. So I guess there's a whole topic around behaviour change that it's like, it's easy to say, but like actually, there's a million books out there about how to change one's habits, be a better XYZ. How do you go about changing behavior, and what does that look like in practice, like for individuals especially?
So We would take it from our business's point of view and what we wanted to achieve, which was to help people and businesses reduce their footprint, create community that wanted to do the same, to collaborate. It has to be simple. If you look at you do a SWOT analysis on the sustainability industry, and a number of things come up all the time. It's really complicated. It's going to take too long. There's too much money. There's fear of failure and making mistakes. There's fear of being accused of green. So what you have to do is break it down, make it simple. Look at how learning happens. Learning happens in tiny bite-sized chunks. I always go back to, I started mixed martial arts at 40. And I remember first.
That's something I didn't know about you, Richard.
So I remember
the first. What I say.
The first 3 months, I was constantly saying I can't do it, and I'd say to the coach I can't, and I'd be throwing up, and it was just a nightmare. And I almost quit on a number of occasions, but it took me actually 6 years to put my foot in the gym for the first time after I made a decision I wanted to do it. However, I didn't have a fight or do any heavy sparring for another 3 years because I knew I wouldn't be able to. And what I did was learn tiny bits each time that I would take home and practice. And I had a friend that trained with me and then got friends. And that became a community that were all individuals learning tiny bits and getting better. You can see there's a lot of sport involved here. Originally, Play It Green was to go into sport, to create climate positive match days and drip feed the tips and the education through the club's social media reach, but COVID ended that. And we became an individual and business support business, although we've gone back into sport now. And so we created something that was simple, aspiring, something that an individual could do, but also could be done by the community that individual's in, the various communities, whether it's home or work. And we call it the 3-step solution to climate change. It sounds really simple, just 3 steps. But what it is it becomes a way of life. It becomes an aspirational journey, and it shifts the dopamine that you get from consumerism to conscious consumerism. And we do that through drip feeding education. So I should go back. The 3-step solution is very simple. It's step 1 is reduce. And we reduce footprints with tips, education, signposting. A good example, obviously, Play It Green partnered with EcoSend, and we've signposted some businesses to you guys because you help people reduce the footprint, and that's what we do. That's part of what we do. We produce a weekly tip every Friday that goes out in a newsletter to all our business members. And the content's simple. It's easy to understand. It breaks things down. There's no long words. We provide solutions as well. We do it all completely transparently. When we promote a business, we don't take money off them. We don't do it for any gain. It's just to help. Step 2 is repair. So while you're on the journey to reducing your footprint, you repair the planet, and you can rebalance your footprint through reforestation. Done in a scientific way, using our advisors to plant the correct trees in the correct places. We also
that's a whole area of correct. Total confusion and complexity, isn't it?
Again, part of my learning with the previous business was there was a lack of transparency with tree planters. There was a lack of checks and balances and making sure things are done correctly. And we did our research for a year before we chose a tree planter to work with. We actually provide the receipts for every tree we plant. We provide our accounts. So part of conscious capitalism is transparency. And then step 3 is we give. So 10% of our turnover goes to charities. We launched with 3. Mine, WWF and Shelter. We've now got 35 with another 3 to go live, and they're all member chosen, the ones over and above the first 3. And that 3-step solution becomes embedded into business. We also provide all the tools, net zero framework, policies, templates, accreditation badges, everything very simple in a members platform that's self-serve. And the idea is it's so simple, so cheap that a business doesn't have a buying decision. It creates engagement in something that everyone wants to know about, has anxiety and fear. And what we've seen, the simplicity is easy to take up, but it also means that the engagement is high. And what happens is we work on evolutionary psychology. As a species, going back to the psychology, we are programmed to produce dopamine when things are good for us, when they answer questions that cause us anxiety and things like that. Very simply break down, you eat a berry that tastes nice and makes you feel good. It gives you dopamine. That dopamine then makes you want to tell other people about it because you want them to know. You get dopamine from them getting dopamine. So this is the collaborative approach. So what we do is we provide tips that make someone go, I didn't know that. And that's answered a question. And then there's a product that maybe a shampoo bar, for example, rather than using a shampoo bottle, they'll use that and they get another hit of dopamine when they use the product because they're playing their part. They then want to tell other people. And that works from bottom up in businesses. It creates culture change. It makes the staff less anxious. It makes them more loyal to the company. And we've seen this over 2 years with feedback from the members that have joined us. But it's the simplicity that's critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's actually really handy hearing it broken down into the simplicity. Trying to tackle this in any other way would be impossible, wouldn't it? And there's already so much, as you were saying, there's already so much complexity. I think a lot of people, speaking from experience here, like going on a journey to being a more climate conscious business, it's like it's so hard to know where to turn, and I think there is so much fear of doing the wrong thing that sometimes the easiest route is to just not do anything and stop in your tracks, and no one wants to be called out for saying or doing the wrong thing. So I think giving people a more accessible path to learn and educate themselves is greatly needed. So it's really, really cool to hear. And also using sort of that dopamine sort of mechanic in a positive way, because I feel like so often you hear about dopamine in the context of Facebook optimizing the way the like button interacts with you, so you spend more time endlessly scrolling social media and things like that, or at least in my world that's what I often hear dopamine referring to. But in this, it's dopamine being used to make people feel good about doing good things, and so that's pretty cool. I guess you touched on it a little bit there, but a whole aspect of what you're doing then is changing business and changing the culture within both businesses at their level, but business in general. And I guess that starts with the individual, but how do you even think about that? How do you even know if you're impacting the culture of business in a positive way, Richard?
So it's interesting. We don't measure, as in we don't speak to the companies and say how many of your staff are opening the email. We have that data using the software we use, but there's two ways. We see a number of our partners starting to promote what they do with us more and more. For example, on their recruitment page. Now, if they're spending this money and their staff weren't actively engaging, this is not something companies would sing and dance about and put out so much in the public domain.
Sure.
The other way, we don't work just on bottom up, but that's the culture change in the education and creating a space where the team are empowered to come up with the solutions themselves. But what we also do is with top down is we provide tools like footprint reporting, carbon reduction plans, sustainability web pages, policies, all the stuff that the sort of company owners and people running the business need. We provide those tools and the signposting to those services as well. Sure. And what you then see is the company goes on a journey. A good example, we recently started working with a company called MC Construction, who had just got a new tender through, and Chris just happened to meet their CEO, and Chris said what he did, and the guy said, we just had a new tender through. He said it's like 20% of the tenders now social and environmental impact. He said there's stuff in there we haven't got a clue about. So Chris very briefly explained it and then said, it starts with education, but you also have to have measurement. And I think 2 and a bit months later, they had the climate positive workforce. They'd done a footprint report for the last 2 years. They had a net zero framework and a plan to be net zero by 2030. We'd signposted to loads of services, and they are now relevant and in the tender process and likely to do very well because they're going above the legislative bits, which is the measurement and plan. That's all you need. And they're doing more. They're educating their staff. They're actively having a social impact through us as well. They're reforesting the planet. These are all things that will make you stand out.
Well, what I love about that is that, often there is a fear of starting, and there is a fear of, this is going to be distracting. Like we've got customers to win. We've got, profit to make. But actually, when you start hearing some of these journeys from businesses that have transformed and put the climate higher on their agenda, it's not. I mean, I'm yet to see a story where someone has put the climate higher on the agenda and done worse financially as a result of it. And it's a win-win for, as you say, recruitment, for probably retention of staff, for winning more bids in terms of the sales process. And it's a win for the planet.
So green investors are all looking at green businesses. They're looking at businesses with strong sustainability strategies. We've actually just received the latest data that Deloitte did. So they've just done, I think it was 15,000 Gen Zs and millennials they interviewed, and found that 1 in 5 of them wouldn't even apply to work for a company that didn't have a strong sustainability strategy. So all of a sudden, you're losing a fifth of the workforce.
Wow.
And again, as you say, the staff retention, staff loyalty, it's all there. The firm I was talking about, Danes Accountants, that uses on their recruitment page, their team, without any prompting from the senior management, started having a poll on our weekly tip products. So they'd all buy one or the other of the products that we promoted, and then they'd share their views.
Really?
So it really was creating amazing culture change. So you'll have to apologise. The bin men are just going past.
Don't worry, that's okay. They got a job to do.
But just going back to the difficulty, this is a common thread. Again, something that you see the pattern of. The fear of starting.
Yeah.
Now, I'll go back to my experience with mixed martial arts. It took me 6 years to put my foot in the gym because of all those fears of the unknown and fears of failure and, exactly the same with sustainability. Businesses are worried about making mistakes. The research shows that actually, if you are transparent, and again, this is conscious capitalism, be transparent and open and honest about your journey, and you make a mistake, and then you learn from it, and you tell people, look, we made this mistake. This was why we did it. We had the best intentions, but it didn't work, and we've learned from it, and next time this is how we'll do it. You will get stronger brand awareness, stronger loyalty. You'll grow your consumer base because that's what people want.
Yeah, it absolutely. It breeds that trust, doesn't it? That
correct.
No one expects a brand to be perfect, and you see so many brands get it wrong where they make a mistake and just don't want to admit that they're wrong or that they made a mistake, and that's certainly been our approach with the journey we've been on with EcoSend. Of when I rewind over a year ago, we really didn't know anything, and I would not proclaim to know it all, like no one knows it all. But each step, like even just doing this podcast, it's like being about learning from others and trying to seek out the wisdom and insights and lessons that other people have learned, so that we can try and hopefully learn. But we have got things wrong over the year or so we've been doing EcoSend, but each time it's like, God, if we had waited till we learned all of this, well, we would never have learned it all, and we would never have started, and then overall the net result would be a net negative for everyone. So it's like, every time it's just definitely whenever I'm talking to other people, it's like just try to put one foot in front of the other, and correct as you go.
Yeah. If you look at the mountain peak when you're at the bottom of the mountain, it seems impossible. But if you just look at the next footstep, that's really easy. And again, that's our approach to sustainability. That's why we put a weekly tip out, one after the other. Going back to oh no, it's gone. I apologise.
No, don't worry. It might come back, Richard. In terms of, I know we always like to talk a bit about what the future holds, and I know I always find it quite difficult talking about the future, knowing what time horizon to look at, and I never feel like I'm very good at predicting the future, other than what the next iPhone might look like. But other than that, but what are your thoughts on the future of, I guess, of conscious capitalism and of business and where we might be going? Are you optimistic, pessimistic, somewhere in between?
Do you know what? We're in times of great change. That's without a doubt. I think Gen Z and millennials are bringing that about, being the first ever fully digital generations who have access to knowledge at their fingertips. I mean, if I wanted to know who the director of a company was, I had to go up to the library and get the bus and go to the library as a kid. You don't. You can find everything out now. This is why appearance is no longer quite as important as what you actually do as a person or a business. Sure. I think gone are the days from the 20s to the 90s, marketing was about spreading falsehoods almost and telling people this is going to make you feel better and be a better person. And, you know, that's gone. It's more about impact, legacy, honesty, transparency. The problem we face is society is more divided than ever before. And change is never good when it's not done collaboratively. Right. Because there's always a winner and a loser, which is not what you want. We want to all win. And there is always a way for that to happen. But that's through collaboration. However, the problems we face, the political system is hundreds of years old. It doesn't work. We vote once every 4 years in the UK, and politicians aren't held accountable to not following through on the promises. The banking and financial system's hundreds of years old. We're living in a modern, super advanced technological era, but using hundreds of year old systems. The biggest issue, though, is education, because we are using an education system that was designed to create factory workers in the Industrial Revolution, and it pretty much hasn't changed since then. It's just evolved slightly, but it needs overhauling. All of these three systems need overhaul. That's very difficult when...
get to it, Richard.
Absolutely. So for me... we're very lucky setting up Play It Green in a time where the change is wanted, because when we speak to businesses, generally they get what we're doing, they're aligned in the values and what we see for the future. And the collaborative approach is growing. We have nearly 200 businesses in our community, and they collaborate, they communicate. We're customer driven, so the next part of development for our members platform is to build a tool so that our members can collaborate directly.
Right.
I heard a story once. Someone said, when you have a baby shower, people should also have a business shower, because if you had 20 business owners when you set your business up, all of whom chose to use your services as your business shower, then all of a sudden you've got 20 clients in their network.
I love that. That's a great idea.
and what we've found is, because every Tuesday we do new member articles which go out in the weekly newsletter, it means that every member of staff in every business that opens the mailer sees that X company has joined the community, and what we get is inbound saying, can you put us in touch? We want to use their services. And that is the goal for Play It Green, is to grow. The goal was the world's largest community of change-making businesses.
Incredible. It just gets strong, and by its very nature, it hopefully gets stronger and stronger with every business, every baby joining.
Correct, and they feed through. So the way, because we have that conscious capitalist sort of ethos and really strong values, there's a low risk to working with us, but there's also a low risk to telling other people that you work with us. So a lot of our members are sending out mailers to their supply chain and to their customer base saying, look, we work with Play It Green, would you like to too? So that, again, that collaborative, positive approach, it works. It's just against the negative narrative of the press and the media and so on, but that's why we take that positive approach.
It's greatly needed. I know we're basically at time, Richard. It's been fascinating chatting. It's always lovely when we wrap up on some advice, and I think you received some advice. I didn't know if you wanted to share that. I believe it may have been something your grandma.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, this is my mantra. And it has been since, again, part of my neurodiversity. Things stick, and you become almost obsessive about them. And my grandma was born and bred Lancashire lass who was in the Land Army during the war in Scotland, and she'd say Luke and Book and Cook and put wood in thole, which meant close the door. And she said to me when I was very young, I was about 6 or 7, she said, if you cast your bread on the waters, son, it comes back buttered. And I just live my life, treat other people well, be good, do good things for people, leave a good impression, and things will come back to you.
Absolutely. That is something I'm sure everyone can take away in their day hearing that. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Richard's grandma. That's lovely. I love it. Thank you, Richard. That's great. I guess just to wrap up then, hopefully there might be a few people listening that really want to go see a bit more and learn a bit more about Play It Green. So people can find you on, we'll put the links in the notes, but on Twitter, LinkedIn, and the website. The website maybe is what's the URL, Richard?
It's playitgreen.com.
Playitgreen.com. Brilliant. And I guess people definitely, Richard's a great follow on LinkedIn as well if you want more of this insight and wisdom. It's always great to see your posts on there, Richard.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Richard. It's been an honour. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, James.
Cheers. Thanks. And thanks everyone for listening along. If you've enjoyed the show, please do give us a nice comment or a rating. It really helps spread the word and tell more people about all of the wonderful conversations we have on these shows, and hopefully spread the message of putting climate a little bit higher on the agenda. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.